Hello, I'm Bakhtiar Sanov and you're watching A News. Let's take a look at today's top stories. Minneapolis shooting draws heavy criticism from former presidents. Donald Trump says he's reviewing the incident. Ukraine president says the progress made after Abu Dhabi talks and the U.S. security agreement ready to be signed. And at least 11 people dead and 800,000 without power as major winter storm hits United States. Tensions are escalating in the United States city of Minneapolis after a U.S. citizen was shot dead by a federal immigration agent. The second fatal incident of its kind this month. The killing has triggered widespread protest, strong criticism and legal action by state authorities. U.S. President Donald Trump declined to say whether the federal officer acted appropriately and said the administration was reviewing the incident. Here is more on that story.
Immigration enforcement operations in Minneapolis are under renewed scrutiny after a U.S. citizen was shot and killed by federal agents, the second fatal shooting linked to immigration operations in the city this month. 37-year-old Alex Pritty, an intensive care nurse, was killed on Saturday during a confrontation with immigration officers. The shooting sparked protests, prompted the deployment of the National Guard, and deepened tensions between state and federal authorities. Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz accused the federal government of escalating violence and demanded the withdrawal of immigration agents.
So now we've got 2 Minnesotans dead. We didn't had time to start telling Renee's story of a poet and a mother and a bright spirit, and now we're telling Alex's story. So my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state? You thought fear, violence, and chaos is what you wanted from us, and you clearly underestimated the people of this state and nation.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison said legal action was being taken to halt the operation.
Minneapolis is a precursor to a whole lot of other places that they have their eye on right here, right now, including Maine and several other states. If we don't stop this behavior here, it will only expand, and it won't be good for anyone in our country.
U.S. President Donald Trump defended his administration's immigration crackdown, saying the operation would continue despite criticism. In a social media post, Trump blamed Democratic-led states and cities for unrest and said the deaths of 2 U.S. citizens were the result of what he called Democrat-ensued chaos. Federal authorities said the agent acted in self-defense, claiming Pritty brandished a firearm, an account disputed by bystander video footage reviewed by Reuters, which appears to show him holding a phone. Border Patrol officials said enforcement operations would continue.
Our Title VIII immigration mission continues, unabated, here in Minneapolis, despite yesterday's tragedy that was preventable by folks making better choices, politicians, journalists, and would-be anarchists and rioters.
Hundreds of protesters later gathered in Minneapolis despite sub-zero temperatures, with demonstrations also reported in other U.S. cities. Pritty's death follows the fatal shooting of another Minnesota resident, Renee Good, earlier this month during federal immigration operations.
Diplomatic efforts between Russia and Ukraine are back in the spotlight after the second round of talks in Abu Dhabi ended without a breakthrough. Moscow has flatly rejected further dialogue with the EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas. Meanwhile, Kiev claims that a major security deal with the United States is now finalized and is simply awaiting a signature.
International talks to end the conflict are once again at a standstill. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov has said Moscow will not engage in talks with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. Russia will simply wait for her to leave office. The remarks came after the talks in Abu Dhabi ended without a deal.
How can you discuss anything with Kaja Kallas? We will never discuss anything with her. nor will the Americans discuss anything with her, and that is obvious. What can we do? We just have to wait until she leaves, or given everything that is going on, EU's leadership, name anyone.
The Kremlin spokesman also said Russia is closely watching US plans for the Golden Dome missile defense system. He emphasized the strategic importance of Greenland.
Of course, it's a strategic location in terms of security. I don't want to speak on who can threaten Greenland, but it has a lot of importance regarding strategic stability and security.
And on the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said at a press conference in Vilnius that the US security guarantees for Ukraine are fully ready. Kyiv is now waiting for the date and location for the document to be signed. Zelensky said the document will go through ratification in both the US Congress and the Ukrainian Parliament, and he stressed that European security guarantees are also crucial.
Technically, Ukraine will be ready in the first half of 2026 to open all clusters to negotiate EU membership. Will be fully technically ready for EU membership in 2027 in our view, and we want a specific date in our agreement on ending the war with Russia, so that all sides then adhere to these agreements, including the aggressor, who would sign a 20-point plan if such a moment comes, so that no one can block us again afterwards.
The president also said he is demanding a specific date for the end of the war, that the aggressor must sign a 20-point plan, and that pressure through sanctions should continue.
I hope America will not reduce pressure on Russia over this war for the sake of diplomacy. Europe must be resolute as well. To continue pressure, sanctions pressure on Russia, Russian tankers transporting oil, including through the Baltic Sea, must be stopped.
It is worth noting that on January 23rd and 24th, Ukraine and Russia held their first trilateral talks in Abu Dhabi. The meeting, attended by US mediators, discussed Washington's framework for ending the war, but no agreement was reached.
A severe winter storm is hitting large parts of the United States, causing at least 11 people to die and bringing heavy snow, extreme cold and major travel disruption. Emergency warnings are in place across several states, but the freezing conditions haven't stopped people from finding moments of joy or coming together to help those in need.
At least 11 people have died as a severe winter storm sweeps across the United States. Bitter cold, heavy snow and ice have left over 800,000 homes and businesses without power and forced the cancellation of more than 17,000 flights. Dangerous cold and hazardous travel are expected to last through Monday, with emergency declarations in over a dozen states. In New York, residents battled strong winds and near whiteout conditions. Mayor Zoran Mamdani ordered schools to close, with classes moving online on Monday and warming centers to open. Temperatures in other parts of New York State plunged to minus 34 degrees Celsius in Watertown and minus 49 in Copenhagen. Further south, families in North Carolina made the most of a rare snowfall, with children sledging through quiet, snow-covered streets. Local reports say it has been more than 10 years since the city last saw snow on this scale. The storm also blanketed Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. In Oklahoma City, frozen ponds, near empty streets, and widespread flight cancellations highlighted the impact as airport crews worked to de-ice aircraft.
You can see there's guys in those buckets.
In Tulsa, Oklahoma, one man has been going above and beyond to help. Ryan Duval spent the weekend driving a 40-year-old fire engine through the city, picking up people exposed to the cold and taking them to warming shelters.
I just saw a need for getting people out of the cold. The negative 20 temperatures really hit me hard, so I know someone staying outside, I wouldn't be able to survive it. So I'm just out here getting those folks off the street.
Duval says he hopes his actions encourage others to help in any way they can.
You know, just cruise the streets, see someone, offer a ride. If they take it, great. If not, I can at least warm them up in the truck and just get them a water, meal, something. And it's just giving back to a community like everybody should do. So,
Authorities across the region are urging people to stay indoors, check on neighbors and seek shelter as the severe winter conditions continue.
Israel says it will open Gaza's Rafah crossing only after completing a military operation to locate the body of the last remaining Israeli hostage, Ran Gvili. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office said the crossing will reopen for pedestrian passage only, under full Israeli control, once the operation is concluded. The Israeli military says a targeted operation is currently underway based on what it describes as several intelligence leads. Meanwhile, violence continued in Gaza, with Palestinian medics reporting 4 people wounded in an Israeli drone strike on Sunday. A News has received a response from the German government following a report on hundreds of criminal cases linked to online insults against Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Officials say the complaints were filed before he took office and that the Chancellery no longer initiates such cases.
A report by Welt am Sonntag has focused attention on how Germany's legal system deals with online insults aimed at senior politicians. The article details how Chancellor Friedrich Merz filed hundreds of criminal complaints for insult between 2021 and 2025, while serving as opposition leader and CDU chairman. According to documents cited by the newspaper, some of those complaints led to police investigations and, in several cases, house searches. The report says the cases were often pursued with the help of a private legal service that scans online content for potential offences. Legal experts quoted in the article question whether such measures were proportionate and warn of possible implications for freedom of expression. Following the report, A News contacted the German federal government for clarification. In a written response, a government spokesperson said that since Merz became Chancellor, the Federal Chancellery has received more than 190 inquiries from police and prosecutors about potentially criminal statements made against him. The spokesperson stressed that no criminal complaints have been filed by the Chancellery in any of these cases. While the Chancellor's office does not object to investigations initiated by law enforcement, it says it does not initiate proceedings itself. The statement sets out the government's current handling of such matters, distinct from actions taken before Merz entered office.
Indian Foreign Minister Subrahmanyam Jaishankar met senior European leaders in New Delhi as they arrived for Republic Day celebrations. The discussions included European Council President Antonio Costa, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. Talks focused on advancing a trade agreement that would lower tariffs on European cars and wine and boost Indian exports. At least 11 people have been killed and a dozen others injured after gunmen opened fire at a soccer match in Salamanca, Mexico. The attack occurred on Sunday at a local sports field, with a woman and a child among the wounded. Mayor Cesar Prieto described the shooting as regrettable and cowardly, saying it reflects a broader wave of violence in the city. Security forces were quickly deployed and authorities have launched an investigation into the incident. Gold has hit a record high, climbing above $5,000 on ounce as investors sought safety amid rising geopolitical tensions. Spot gold rose 0.75% to just over $5,019 per ounce, while U.S. futures for February delivery gained 0.84%. Silver also strengthened up 2.5% to $105 an ounce. The rise comes as tensions between the United States and NATO over Greenland fuel concerns about financial and geopolitical uncertainty, driving demand for the safe haven metal. Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss the Abu Dhabi talks on ending the Ukraine war and what comes next. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. 2 days of direct closed-door talks between Ukraine, Russia and the United States wrapped up in Abu Dhabi this weekend, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calling them constructive and agreeing to a follow-up round next week. The discussions, framed under a US-backed peace plan, explored parameters for ending nearly 4 years of war, even as Russian strikes battered Ukrainian cities and energy infrastructure, prompting widespread outages amid freezing winter conditions. Zelensky also says a U.S. security guarantees document is fully ready for signing and will soon go to the U.S. Congress and Kiev's parliament. Joining us now is Orkan Nabiev, political analyst from Baku, Azerbaijan. Orkan, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for hosting me.
Orkan, how would you assess the significance of this first direct trilateral engagement between Ukraine, Russia and the United States in Abu Dhabi? And also, President Zelensky described the talks as constructive. What tangible progress can we point to from these sessions?
First of all, after the March 2022, this is the first this-scale meeting between Ukraine and Russia. And President Trump, President of the United States, put his own influence and his own name into these meetings, and he's interested these meetings, this kind of negotiations have the result in the end. And after that, Russians also, we can notice that they are agreed to make some compromises, but this kind of compromise are not open to the society publicly, as well as Ukraine, I guess, already ready to make the Donbas, part of the Donbas, unmilitarized zone. But now Zelensky didn't want to announce it publicly. Now we think that this kind of the negotiations will have the results in future, but attack of the civilian infrastructure in Ukraine makes us very not optimistic about this.
Why territory, especially in Donbas, remains the core sticking point? What makes this issue so difficult to resolve at the negotiating table?
Because in the end, Russia didn't achieve any goals, any objectives that announced before this large-scale war. They didn't change the government in Ukraine. They announced it before the attack. They didn't get all Ukraine because the plan of the Putin was to take over the Ukraine and make it an allied country as Belarus. And the other denazification, demilitarization, and we saw that Ukraine became more military powerful than it was in 2022. Therefore, they need to sell results to their own country, showing that we get all Donbass in the end.
Orkan, Zelensky says a U.S. security assurances document is 100% ready. What might these guarantees entail and how impactful could they be?
If Zelensky also mentioned that it should be ratified in the Congress of the United States, it means the United States takes the responsibility to protect Ukraine if there will be any kind of attack against the Ukraine territory. Because now after the giving the Donbass, Zelensky looking for a guarantee from European Union, and he got these guarantees. Now he also wants the guarantees from the United States. And without the Congress, without the ratification in Congress, he cannot get this kind of guarantees. It means that it will be something close to the Fifth Amendment of the NATO's chapter, the NATO's charter.
In your view, is Russia negotiating in good faith on ending the war, or using the talks to reset international pressure while continuing military operations?
If Russia would stop today the attack on the civilian infrastructure, energy infrastructure of Ukraine, if Russia will agree to stop the any kind of air attack against the Ukraine, it will be the good sign. But continuing negotiations at the same time attacking the Ukrainian cities, leaving civilians in the very bad conditions, in a very harsh, cold weather, it means that Russia just imitates the negotiations and it tries to prolong this situation for the next year until like maybe they can freeze the war for a couple of years, and after Trump they can again start attack Ukraine. So I think that it's imitations of negotiation. It's not nothing more than that.
So with a third round planned next week, what should we expect and what benchmarks will indicate real momentum?
I think that in the end, Russia would agree to stop some kind of the attacks against Ukrainian infrastructure. Recently, they totally destroyed it, nothing left. And maybe considering that it's like end of the winter, they will stop it for, will agree with stop it. And Ukraine also will give this kind of compromises that they agree for referendum, making the Donbass, the part of Donbass that remained under Ukraine, unmilitary zone, as well as that they will agree for the next, providing the next elections. And for this kind of next elections, also Russia could be agreed to stop attacking air attacks against Ukraine.
Orkan, what do you think? Could the talks later involve additional actors such as the EU or NATO?
I don't think that EU will be added because Russia and EU they don't like each other, and we saw that also the Peskov's interview. He said that they will not negotiate with EU, especially with Kallas. However, United States they took the more neutral position than European Union. European Union shows themselves maximum pro-Ukrainian and against Russia. That's where Russia they don't want to have any kind of negotiation. And we saw today that European Union agreed to stop buying the natural gas from Russia in 2027. It means that from the 1st of January, all kind of the liquid gas, and from the September, all kind of the pipeline gas.
So do you see a future direct meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky as possible or desirable?
I don't think, because of Vladimir Putin, he don't recognize Vladimir Zelensky as a legit president. Considering that not in the upcoming month, maybe after the elections, the leader of the Ukraine can have a meeting with Vladimir Putin, but Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, they have personal hatred against each other.
So Orkan, where should Ukraine draw its non-negotiable red lines in any peace framework?
Legally recognizing the territories under the Russia. Russia, in the Russian constitution, in the Russian new constitution, the occupied territories are part of the Russia, and de jure recognizing it by the Ukraine, it's a red lines. De facto, they will recognize it as a part of Russia, and they will get this kind of compromises that they will not attack these lands by military. Maybe in the future, Russia will become a weak, or it will be some kind of the civil war inside the Russia. But as well as Putin in the charge of the Russia, they will not attack this lands militarily. This will be a red line for Ukraine, that they will not accept the occupied territories.
But how should issues of war crimes, accountability and reconstruction be factored into the negotiations?
About the reconstruction, there is a 800 billion contract with the United States that the United States wants to invest in the Ukraine, as well as there is also the 300 billion of the Russian frozen actives in the Ukraine that will be also invested in Ukraine. And regarding that, about the war crimes, maybe that in the contrary of this 300 billion Russian activists, Russia will accept. So, in saying that Russia's contributions and the Russians, the payment against this kind of the crimes will be the frozen actives and nothing more. So Vladimir Putin will not be arrested, and all the generals will not be arrested. Russia will pay just these contributions.
And finally, given the deep fatigue among Ukrainians and international observers, what message should leaders send to manage expectations without undermining the peace process?
This message should be in this frame that peace is important, but it's never the just. So Russia will get not what they want, but they will get the more part of they will put in the goal, especially Donbass and the part of the Zaporozhye and the half of the Kherson region, but not the Kherson city. However, for living in the peace, Ukrainians should sacrifice the part of their lands, and it's not just, it's not fair, but it is what it is.
Orkan Nabiev, thank you very much for this discussion. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for hosting me.
Now, after the break, we'll take a look at the major stories from the region. Welcome back to A News. Now let's take a closer look at the key stories shaping the region. Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar visits Azerbaijan on Monday. During the visit, he was received by President Ilham Aliyev. The talks focused on expanding cooperation in key areas, including trade, energy and technology, and highlighted strong ties between the two countries.
President of Azerbaijan Ilham Aliyev met Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar in Baku on Monday. The sides discussed the development of Azerbaijan-Israel relations. They recalled recent talks between the presidents of Azerbaijan and Israel in Davos. The meeting focused on cooperation in trade, energy, tourism, agriculture, water management, high technologies and artificial intelligence. Both sides said regular mutual visits help strengthen relations. The role of the Azerbaijan-Israel Intergovernmental Commission was also noted. It was mentioned that its latest meeting had taken place recently. Gideon Sa'ar said he was visiting Azerbaijan with representatives of major business circles. The minister said the Azerbaijan-Israel Business Forum would help expand economic and trade ties. Sa'ar also thanked President Aliyev for state support for the Jewish community in Azerbaijan. During his visit, the minister met leaders of the Jewish community in Baku. In a post on his Telegram channel, he said about 30,000 Jews live in Azerbaijan alongside the Muslim population, in an atmosphere of religious tolerance and freedom of worship. Sa'ar said Azerbaijan is an example of a Muslim-majority country that ensures the safety and well-being of its Jewish community. He added that Jews living in Azerbaijan and those who have moved to Israel form a strong base for relations between the two countries. Gideon Sa'ar said these ties will continue to grow.
The Asian Development Bank is considering a $50 million loan for a regional project aimed at upgrading border and transit infrastructure, with Azerbaijan identified as a key participant. The project spans multiple countries across Central and South Asia, with Azerbaijan's experience in digital customs systems and transport corridors cited as a model. ADB says the loan could be approved in 2028, with financing expected to come from the bank's own capital resources. Last year, Azerbaijan exported goods worth $788,800 to Armenia, according to Azerbaijan's State Customs Committee. In contrast, no exports were recorded from Armenia to Azerbaijan during the same period. The trade flow was driven mainly by fuel shipments. In December, Azerbaijan sent RON 95 gasoline to Armenia, followed in January by additional deliveries of RON 95 diesel and RON 92 gasoline. Georgia's disputed 2024 parliamentary elections have reached Europe's highest human rights court. The Strasbourg court has begun reviewing complaints challenging the integrity of the vote, a legal process that could carry long-term consequences for Georgia's electoral system, but not immediate political outcomes.
The European Court of Human Rights has started reviewing complaints concerning Georgia's 2024 parliamentary elections. The cases were filed by the Georgian Young Lawyers Association, JYLA, and several individual applicants. At the core of the complaint are allegations that the election administration failed to protect the secrecy of the vote, particularly at polling stations using electronic voting technologies. JYLA also challenges limits on election complaints in Georgian law and argues that too few polling stations abroad restricted citizens' right to vote. The court is examining the case under the European Convention's provisions on free elections and the right to an effective legal remedy. Georgia has until May 15th to submit its position. The government, however, says that the significance of the court's actions is being overstated. Officials argue that a large part of the complaints has already been declared inadmissible and that no substantive review has begun. According to the parliamentary majority, the court is still deciding whether the remaining claims meet basic admissibility requirements, including proof of individual rights violations. JYLA disputes this interpretation. The organization says that the court has consolidated 3 complaints and may treat the case as one of significant impact, allowing it to examine whether problems with electronic voting affected the secrecy of ballots on a broader scale. The legal debate takes place against a highly polarized political background. The 2024 parliamentary elections were among the most tense in Georgia's recent history, followed by widespread disputes and challenges to the government's legitimacy. Since then, Georgia's political direction and its foreign policy course have increasingly come under question. Importantly, the Strasbourg court is not deciding who governs Georgia. Its role is legal, not political. Any eventual ruling, likely years away, would focus on election procedures and could influence how future elections are conducted, including electronic voting, overseas polling, and access to courts. For now, the case remains at an early stage. The court has asked questions, not reached conclusions. What happens next depends on whether the complaints pass the admissibility phase and move to a full legal judgment. Nini Nikolaishvili, Tbilisi, A-News.
Iranian authorities have unveiled a mural in capital Tehran showcasing strike on a U.S. aircraft carrier and its burning flag in a sharp warning against an impending attack on the Islamic Republic as the Tehran-Washington impasse is inching toward a military standoff.
A large billboard has been installed in Iran's capital, Tehran, shortly after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that he is moving warships to the Middle East just in case he wants to take action against Iran. The mural, which was set up in downtown Enqilab Square on Sunday, displays in graphics a targeted U.S. Navy ship in white stars against a blue background, as well as the U.S. flag in red flaming stripes. A slogan in English and Persian across its corner reads, "If you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind," in an apparent strong warning to the United States. Last week, Trump said aboard Air Force One that the U.S. is watching Iran and is moving the ships towards the country just in case he decides to take action. Iranian officials have vowed strong retaliation in the event of a U.S. military action as USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier approaches toward Iran amid forces buildup at U.S. bases in the Middle East. Earlier, Deputy Commander of Iran's Islamic Revolution Guards, Brigadier General Ahmad Vahidi, said today Iran is more prepared than during the 12-day Israeli-U.S. war last June. Other military generals have also warned the US and Israel to avoid any miscalculation, saying that Iranian forces are more ready than ever with their finger on the trigger. Analysts are voicing concern over a likely Pearl Harbor-style preemptive strike by Iran by pounding U.S. interests in the region, targeting Israel and shutting down of the Strait of Hormuz and flow of oil if Tehran comes to the conclusion that the U.S. military action is imminent. Turad Shiralilu, Tehran, A News.
Turkey has sent a new batch of humanitarian aid to northern Syria as fighting continues despite a declared ceasefire. 11 aid trucks reached the city of Ain al-Arab, also known as Kobani, carrying food and winter supplies for civilians. The delivery comes amid renewed tensions between Syrian government forces and the Kurdish-led SDF.
Turkey on Sunday dispatched 11 trucks of humanitarian aid to the Syrian city of Ain al-Arab, also known as Kobani, to help civilians affected by ongoing fighting in northern Syria. The relief shipment was carried out by Turkey's Emergency Management Authority and the Turkish Red Crescent in coordination with Damascus and an aid coordination center in the Syrian city of Aleppo. According to Turkish state media, the overland aid convoy included 5 trucks carrying 50 tons of flour, 5 trucks with other food supplies, and 1 truck loaded with winter blankets. The Turkish aid delivery comes amid continued fighting in northern Syria between government security personnel and the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, despite a ceasefire deal that was announced last week. On Sunday, Damascus alleged that the SDF, which Ankara views as a terrorist group, had carried out 25 drone attacks on positions in the Aleppo countryside in violation of the truce. Announced in mid-January, the landmark ceasefire deal calls for the SDF to lay down its arms and integrate its fighters into Syria's state military. It also calls for SDF-held areas, including border crossings and oil fields, to be placed under the control of Syria's central government. This is Adam Mara for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will visit Turkey on Monday. The trip aims to strengthen relations between the two countries. The Nigerian presidency said the visit will focus on cooperation in security, education, social development, innovation and aviation. During the visit, talks will focus on finance, communications, trade and investment. Memorandums of understanding are expected to be signed in scientific research, energy and military cooperation. A business forum for investors from both countries will also take place. The visit follows Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's official trip to Nigeria in October 2021. Turkey's top winter tourism destinations are experiencing an unprecedented surge in visitors this season, as the mid-year school break drives record crowds to the country's ski resorts. From central Anatolia to the Black Sea region, slopes are packed, hotels are near full capacity, and lift lines stretch to the summits.
Turkey's winter tourism hotspots are experiencing one of their busiest seasons in years, as the mid-year school holiday sends hundreds of thousands of vacationers to the mountains. One of the standout destinations this winter is Erciyes Ski Resort in central Turkey's Kayseri province. Just during the first weekend of the semester break, around 250,000 visitors flocked to the resort. Set on the slopes of Mount Erciyes, the resort features 112 kilometres of ski runs across 41 pistes served by 19 modern lift systems. Easy access, high-quality infrastructure and its close connection to Cappadocia have made Erciyes a major draw for both local and international tourists. Since the ski season officially opened on December 20th, Erciyes has already welcomed 1 million visitors in less than a month. The surge has pushed the resort to full capacity, with packed parking areas, long lines at cable cars and heavy congestion during peak hours. Similar scenes are playing out at Uludağ, one of Turkey's most popular winter resorts near the northwestern city of Bursa. Snow depth there has reached up to 81 centimetres, turning the slopes and nearby hotels into a lively winter hub. Tourism operators say hotel occupancy rates have climbed to around 90%, driven by strong demand throughout the school holiday. Students across Turkey remain on winter break until 30 January, returning to classrooms on 2nd February, bringing an end to one of the busiest mid-season periods Turkey's ski resorts have seen in recent years.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching us and stay tuned to A News for more updates.